stalking. There are many names for this form of systematic control and harassment. Under the gang stalking label, you will also find such names as organized stalking, cause stalking, multi-stalking, community mobbing, but it's all part of the same harassment protocol. What many people do not realize is that this gang stalking is just one of the appendages of this systematic form. There are many forms of control used to repress and keep individuals in line. Other forms of appendages include, but not limited to, mobbing, COINTELPRO, the buzz sawing, covert war, electronic harassment. And when I talk about electronic harassment, I'm referring to the microwave weapons that they use, the low ultrasound weapons that they've used. These weapons have been used on me. I've actually seen them in my neighbor's hands. I've seen them in the windows. I've seen the low ultrasound boxes underneath the trees pointing towards my house. And what the low ultrasound frequencies do is it's a form of trying to drive people crazy. Targets are chosen because of many reasons. They can be chosen for political views. They can be chosen for whistleblowing. They can be chosen because they belong to a dissident movement. People that are going to these tea parties, I hear, are claiming they're becoming targets. You can just go to a simple protest in front of the library and become a target. They can choose you because you assert your rights at work. They can choose you because you may have wronged one of their enemies. You may have written a letter to somebody in government or signed a petition. They were deemed any suspicion by a civilian spy snitch, and their names were handed over. It's becoming apparent that targets may be chosen for this systematic form of control if they are not ready in some way a part of the controlled system that they're coming up with. Many targeted individuals seem to be unaware that large chunks of our society are now being used as citizen informants. Now, I can tell you, you can go right into YouTube and see Obama, a speech that he did. Glenn Beck put this out, where Obama said that he is forming a citizens military, that he wants to be even more powerful than our military itself. And these are these perpetrators that are targeting American citizens. That's what this is all about, folks. Back to you, Independence.
Thank you, Bad Baby. I'd like to play another audio for you right now. This is from a former agent. This is from Russell Tyson. This talks a little bit about George Bush and some of these surveillance programs.
Retreats before this evening, as one source for the revelation in 2005 by the New York Times that President Bush was eavesdropping on American citizens without warrants. Tonight, the next chapter from Mr. Tice, a chapter he feared to reveal while George Bush occupied the Oval Office, that under the color of fighting terrorism, the Bush administration was also targeting specific groups of Americans for surveillance, non-terrorist Americans, if you will. Mr. Tice prepared to name one of those groups tonight. The NSA was already estimated to have collected millions of transmissions, emails, and phone calls of average Americans simply by patching into the networks of cooperative telecommunications companies. You will recall the infamous room 641A at the AT&T Folsom Street facility in San Francisco, in which the whole of AT&T's portion of the Internet was duplicated inside a room accessible only to the NSA. Mr. Tice, however, was also involved in another program and told us that he was first directed to focus on these specific groups in order to weed them out from legitimate surveillance targets, but ultimately concluded that the weeding out was actually an internal NSA coverage story for a real goal, which was simply spying on those Americans. Initially, Mr. Bush told the nation all his surveillance was legal.
Anytime you hear the United States government talking about wiretap, a wiretap requires a court order.
After the New York Times revealed that to be a lie, Mr. Bush claimed his surveillance circumvented the constitutionally required process of obtaining a court-ordered warrant only in cases of clear links to terrorism.
The weeks following the terrorist attacks on our nation, I authorized the National Security Agency, consistent with U.S. law and the Constitution, to intercept the international communications of people with known links to Al-Qaeda and related terrorist organizations.
Let me stop this for a second. Bad Baby, do you have any links to Al-Qaeda? I don't have any links to Al-Qaeda. And meanwhile, they're playing with my computer or my telephone. I find that to be a total idiotic statement. Let's go back to listening to this moron.
Before we intercept these communications, the government must have information that establishes a clear link to these terrorist networks.
Joining me now in his first public revelation of these charges is Russell Tice, former analyst with the National Security Agency. Thank you for your time, sir. Thanks for having me. Let's start with the overview. We heard the remarks from Mr. Bush in 2005 that only Americans who would have been eavesdropped on without a warrant were those who were talking to terrorists overseas. Based on what you know, what you've seen firsthand, and what you have encountered in your experience, how much of that statement was true?
Well, I don't know what our former president knew or didn't know. I was sort of down in the weeds. But the National Security Agency had access to all Americans' communications, faxes, phone calls, and their computer communications. And that it didn't matter whether you were in Kansas, in the middle of the country, and you'd never made a communication or a foreign communications at all. They monitored all communications.
To what degree?
So what he said was, folks, that they're just illegally violating the law. They have no NSL letters. They'll just monitor whoever they want. They'll just do whatever they want, ladies and gentlemen. I find it ironic that, this is out of the words of agents, and I'll say it again. These people need to be arrested. They need to be shut down, because the more we get angry, the more scared they get. Nancy Pelosi was on a video right after the big march on September 12th, and ladies and gentlemen, she was scared. She was scared. These people are scared of the American citizens. They're scared for us to find out what they're doing. Now, in the last shows, a couple of shows that we had put out, we were talking about FEMA and the takeover and the concentration camps and what's going on. This is all part of it. It's all intertwined. All of this is one thing. It may be a lot of different types of criminality, okay, many, many different types, but it all comes back to the same thing. Let me further this audio to you.
Is that likely to mean actual eavesdropping and actual inspection? In other words, it's not actually read or monitored by the NSA. Everything was collected by the NSA, recorded, archived. Do you have any idea to what degree the information was ever looked at, per se?
Well, it's actually, even for the NSA, it's impossible to literally collect all communications. Americans tend to be a chatty group. We have the best computers at the agency, but certainly not that good. But what was done was a sort of an ability to look at the metadata, the signaling data for communications, and ferret that information to determine what communications would ultimately be collected, and it basically filtering out, sort of like sweeping everything with that metadata, and then cutting down ultimately what you're going to look at and what's going to be collected, and in the long run have an analyst look at needles in the haystack for what might be of interest.
What might be of interest is that they can remote view you in your home and watch you take a shower. That's their remote interest. Back to you, Bad Baby.
Yeah, well, I hear you there, Independence. Also, I'm going to go over who takes part in being a perpetrator and harassing targeted individuals. And I've been a target for over 10 years. Many of the people I'm going to name off here have been part of this hurting me, and I've caught locksmiths out and out lying to me, police officers I've caught in lies, but I'm going to go through the list. People from all walks of life are being recruited to be the eyes and ears of the state. People from all races, ages, genders, even sectors of society that you can think is part of, couldn't even imagine that would be part of this. So civilian spies, snitches include, but are not limited to, general laborers, the wealthy, bikers, drug dealers, drug users, street people, punks, hip-hop cultures, KKK, black activists, church groups, youth groups, firefighters, police officers, lawyers, healthcare workers, storekeepers, maids when you go to a hotel or motel, maids are involved, and I've caught maids in motels involved.